Welcome to our journey into Icelandic culture in the 1960s. Let's get started quickly. Welcome to Iceland in the 1960s. Today we'll explore what daily life was like on this small island nation in the middle of the North Atlantic. Fishing villages, steaming hot springs, simple houses, harsh winters, and a rapidly changing society. Iceland in the 1960s was a melting pot of tradition and modernisation. Reykjavík in the 1960s was much smaller and quieter than the capital today, and as you can see in the pictures, people smoked more. Most of the population was concentrated around the capital, but the city still retained its small-town feel. American influence was beginning to show on the streets. Cars like Chevrolet and Ford were noticeable on Icelandic roads. Iceland's harsh climate dictated its clothing culture. Thick wool sweaters, hand-knitted garments and long coats were not just fashion, but a matter of survival. Icelandic houses were generally simple but functional. Thanks to geothermal energy, many homes had the advantage of hot water and heating. Families spent evenings together, knitting, reading books, or listening to the radio. Wool was an indispensable part of Icelandic culture. The famous loppapeysa sweaters were still widely worn during this period. What was the food culture like in Iceland in the past? Icelandic cuisine consists of practical and resilient foods shaped by the harsh climate. Dried fish, lamb, soups, dairy products and rye bread were staples of daily life. Some traditional dishes that are now considered outdated were consumed back then, but for most of the population, food was not a luxury, but a natural part of survival. What was fish culture and fishing like in Iceland in the past? And was it really the main source of income? The fish industry provided employment for thousands of Icelanders in the early 1960s, not only aboard fishing vessels, but throughout the entire harbour economy. Along the busy waterfront, workers unloaded large catches of cod and herring, while others sorted, cleaned and packaged fish inside processing plants. Cold storage warehouses, packing facilities and industrial buildings lined the docks, forming the economic heart of many coastal towns. Trucks transported goods between factories and shipping areas as seagulls circled overhead. The harbour was filled with activity, reflecting the importance of fishing to Iceland's growth, livelihoods, and daily life during this era. Authentic 1960s Iceland, realistic fishing harbour, workers in wool clothing, overcast North Atlantic weather.
Keep them moving. We've got a fresh catch coming in now. Working hard today, aren't we?
What was urbanisation like in Iceland in the 1960s? The 1960s were a decade of remarkable transformation for Iceland. Although the country remained sparsely populated and deeply connected to its traditional roots, rapid modernisation was beginning to reshape everyday life. Urbanisation accelerated as more Icelanders left isolated farms and small fishing villages to settle in growing towns, particularly the capital city of Reykjavík. New housing developments appeared on the outskirts of cities, reflecting the changing needs of a modern society. Fishing remained the backbone of the Icelandic economy, with cod and herring exports providing much of the nation's income. Harbours expanded, fishing fleets became more technologically advanced, and processing facilities grew larger and more efficient. The prosperity generated by the fishing industry helped fund improvements in infrastructure, education, and public services throughout the country. The effects of the Cold War could also be felt across Iceland. Due to its strategic location in the North Atlantic, the country played an important role within the Western Alliance. The presence of foreign military personnel at Keflavik Air Base brought international attention, economic activity, and greater exposure to foreign cultures and products. American music, films, and consumer goods became increasingly familiar to younger generations. Transportation and communication networks improved significantly during the decade. Roads connected remote communities more effectively, automobile ownership increased, and domestic air travel became an important means of transportation across the island's rugged terrain. Radio was a central part of family life, while telephone services expanded steadily, helping connect people across vast distances. Daily life was changing as well. More households gained access to modern conveniences such as refrigerators, washing machines, and improved heating systems powered by Iceland's growing use of geothermal energy. Schools and healthcare services expanded, contributing to a higher standard of living and greater opportunities for younger generations. Yet, despite these advances, much of traditional Icelandic culture remained intact. Fishing communities continued their centuries-old relationship with the sea. Rural families maintained strong local traditions, and the Icelandic language and cultural heritage remained central to national identity. Old and new existed side by side, creating a unique blend of tradition and progress. By the end of the 1960s, Iceland had become more prosperous, more connected to the outside world, and increasingly confident about its future. The decade served as a bridge between the old Iceland of fishing villages and isolated farms, and the modern nation that would continue to develop in the decades ahead. What were the differences between then and present-day Iceland? Iceland in the 1960s was very different from the modern, highly touristic and globally connected country we see today. At that time, it was still a relatively small and close-knit society, with a population that was far lower than it is now, and communities that were tightly bound through shared work, traditions, and geography. Daily life was shaped by necessity and cooperation, rather than convenience or luxury, and people often depended heavily on one another, especially in rural areas where isolation could be extreme during harsh weather conditions. The economy was overwhelmingly based on fishing, which was not just an industry, but the backbone of survival for many families and towns. Coastal villages relied on the sea for income, food, and trade, and fishing seasons dictated the rhythm of life. Modern infrastructure was still developing, so transportation between regions could be difficult, and many settlements remained relatively isolated. Electricity, heating systems, and road networks were improving during this period, but they had not yet reached the level of comfort and efficiency that would come in later decades. Culturally, Icelanders in the 1960s maintained strong traditions rooted in their Nordic heritage, with a deep connection to storytelling, literature, and the natural environment. Despite gradual modernization, rural life still preserved older ways of living, including family-based labor and community cooperation in farming and fishing activities. The contrast between emerging urban life in Reykjavík and traditional rural lifestyles was becoming more noticeable during this decade, marking a period of transition for the nation. Politically and socially, the country was also evolving. Iceland was becoming more engaged in international relations during the Cold War era, while internally it was investing in education, healthcare, and infrastructure development. These changes slowly began to reshape society, creating a bridge between its traditional past and its modern future. Ultimately, this resilient and resourceful way of life in the 1960s, shaped by isolation, harsh nature, and strong community bonds, helped form the cultural identity that still defines Iceland today, making its modern prosperity feel deeply rooted in its historical experience. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video exploring the rich cultural history of Iceland.